Hi, I'm Tails, proud new owner of Bluefields Farm. Today I'm beginning my journey to reach perfection in Stardew Valley 1.6. Now, I love a 100 days challenge as much as the next person, but I'm no Stardew Valley pro. Instead, I'm going to be sharing with you my life as a farmer, 1 week at a time until I've explored everything the valley has to offer. Here is where my story begins. Day 1 started off like any other Meadowlands playthrough would. I collected my 15 hay and hurried over to check out my shiny new coop and meet my baby chicks, Polka and Dot. I dropped off some hay and headed outside to start getting rid of some of this green grass. I mean, this is Bluefields Farm after all, right? With that taken care of, I got to work on the big task of cleaning up my farmland. And since we don't start with any parsnip seeds on the Meadowlands farm, I put my side to good use and tried to gather up some mixed seeds to get started. I managed to gather a whopping total of 3 seeds. It was then time to venture into the big wide world and find my first forageables. I scrounged up a few spring onions, a couple of horseradishes, and down by the beach found some carrot seeds and a clam, which was enough to reach foraging level 1. Nice! I made my way up to Pierre's, making a pit stop at every bin on the way. I then bought a green bean, a cauliflower, and emptied my wallet onto the counter and asked Pierre to hand over all of the parsnip seeds. With my first haul of crops in the ground and tended to, I headed out to the mountains and bus stopped for more forageables, and stopped by the saloon to introduce myself to some of the townspeople. The night was still young, so back on my farm I used the last of my energy of the day to continue work on cleaning up my farm. I then dragged my overexhausted body back to bed and called it a day just after 10 PM. Rising on morning 2, feeling fresh as a daisy, I took care of my daily chores, watering my crops and petting my chickens. I won't always tell you this part, but I do look after them, I promise. It was then time to go and meet the local fisherman, where I stared lovingly into his eyes until he handed over his bamboo pole. Thanks, Willie. I wasted no time in putting my new fishing rod to use and settled down by the mountain lake where I fished all through the day. Once both my heart and pockets were full, I dropped my freshly caught fish onto the ground to marinate for a while, then stopped back up my farm to put all of the goodies I had fished up into my chest for safekeeping, before heading back to my cosy spot by the lake where, this time, I was joined by Sebastian. He didn't actually speak to me, but it was nice to have the company anyhow. I fished through the night until I passed out under the glow of the night sky at 2 AM. Oh, and there I reached fishing level 2. Day 3 was upon us, and so was Clint, upon my doorstep, unannounced. Not to worry though, because he brought us a gift, a furnace recipe since I fished up some ore yesterday. When I checked my mail, I had received a letter from Harvey, who evidently was not impressed that I couldn't afford medical care. Unperturbed by this, I continued on with my day and headed into town, where I picked up a help wanted quest to catch 3 sunfish. That's, not a great day to ask for that, Demetrius. I paid a visit to Willie as it was time to reap the rewards of all the fish I had worked so hard to catch yesterday in hopes of buying the shiny new fiberglass rods, but even with the 3 carps I left on the beach, it still wasn't enough. Hanging my head in shame, I went back outside to the pier to try and catch a couple more fish. And at last, the fiberglass rod was mine. I then spent the last of my gold on a meagre amount of bait. I tried a spot of river fishing before getting absolutely smoked by a catfish. So I decided to retreat back to the mountain lake for the night where, you guessed it, I filled my pockets and fished until I passed out in the mud slumped against my trusty test at 2 AM. I'm kinda getting used to this. This brought me up to fishing level 4. On day 4, I woke to yet another letter reminding me of just how poor I am, except this time it was from Joja. Thanks, Morris. I replenished my chickens' hay supplies, stole their eggs, and failed to resist the urge to rummage through the neighbours' bins on my way to stop by Willie's shop to prepare for my day ahead, where I stocked up on all the bait I could afford. I remembered I had a help wanted quest to sabotage the sunfish population, so I sat up on the bridge for a couple of hours until my mission was complete. I reported my great success to Demetrius right away, and he seemed very pleased with my work. You're welcome, Demetrius. I returned to my spot by the lake, where I'm pretty sure there are indents of my footprints in the ground now, and stayed until around 5 PM, where I caught the last fish I needed to reach level 5 fishing. I immediately stuffed my pockets full of fish and hurried back to my farm, as it was time to sell all the fish I'd been hoarding in my chest. I can practically smell the riches now. I'm no slacker, so instead of putting up my feet, I chopped trees for the rest of the night, only ever stopping to shovel food into my face for more energy. I kept working all through the night until just past midnight, where I hopped into bed and chose Fisher as my profession, and levelled up in foraging. Day 5 started with the second unsolicited visitor of the week, except this time it was Marnie offering me a cat to keep on the farm. I of course said yes and decided to name them Pickles. I checked the mail and the letter I had been waiting for had finally arrived. The mines were open. I finished my daily chores quicker than a child cleaning their room on Christmas Eve, and then raced to the mines, where Marlon was just, standing there.
He's just standing there, menacingly!
Anyway, he, handed over a rusty sword, and with that, it was time to jump into the mines, where I found my first geode on floor 1, my first earth crystal on floor 3, and made it to floor 5 by 11 AM, where I also found a wooden club in a barrel. I won't be needing you anymore. I crafted my first furnace and began smelting some copper ore, then headed back into the mines for a few hours, only making it as far as floor 7. At 6 PM I gathered up my belongings and headed into town. I picked up another help wanted quest, this time it was to catch some carp, and then I made my way over to the saloon to roleplay as a social farmer. Abigail admitted to trespassing on my farm, and by the end of the night I still had quite a few people left to meet. I went out for an evening walk to ponder over my plans for the weekend, with the added bonus of finding some forageables, and back on my farm I chopped trees and smelted copper until it was time to turn in for the night, where I reached level 1 in farming and level 1 mining. I was very popular on day 6, Dad sent me 500 gold, Robin tempted me with a well, and Marlon tasked me with slaying 10 slimes. Challenge accepted. I fought my way through the mines with my wooden club, slaying every monster that tried to stand in my way, and this time I managed to reach floor 10 and collect the new leather boots I ordered. Not the best delivery service, but they look good, right? I continued slaying my way through the mines, and a rock crab was kind enough to hand over a dwarf scroll, making this my first artefact of the playthrough. I stayed in the mines until around 2:30 when I realised I needed to get to Clint's before he closed up shop for the day. Both Abigail and Harvey tried to intercept me. He's clearly still unhappy about my unpaid medical bills. But alas, it wasn't enough to stop me, and I barged into the shop at 3:50. Clint was still on the clock, so he was more than happy to upgrade my pickaxe, and even opened up a couple of the geodes I had stuffed in my pocket. I headed next door to the museum to put Gunther out of his misery, and donated a mudstone, a dwarf scroll, topaz and quartz. It was about this moment when I remembered that I'm supposed to be running a farm, so I stopped by Pierre's and picked up a generous supply of parsnip seeds. I do like my snips. Like the diligent farmer I am, I immediately planted all my seeds, and then I was feeling a bit peckish, so I decided to make a quick visit to the saloon since it's the only place to get food in this town, and bought a couple of salads for dinner. Oh, and hi Leah. I took my meal to go and ate it standing right in the middle of my farm, and now with a full belly I could continue working through the night, and even hired my first farmhand. I fell into bed around 1 AM and levelled up in both combat and mining. The morning of the 7th I tuned in to watch my favourite show, The Queen of Sauce, where I learnt how to make a stir fry. I don't have a kitchen yet, but hey, a girl can dream. I went around the farm completing my daily chores and finally planted the rice that had been sat in my chest for the week. On my walk into town I came across Mayor Lewis, who was moping around outside the community centre trying to decide whether he was going to become a sellout. We took a peek inside, where I was jump scared by an apple, and I had a little nosy at the glowing sign on the floor. I had no idea what it said though, so I headed out to do what I do best, and spent the afternoon fishing at the mountain lake. Once again I ended my fishing trip with cramming my pockets until they were ready to burst, and headed into town. I gifted Caroline a daffodil, picked up another quest to catch some more sunfish, and then finally I went around harassing all of the neighbours I hadn't met yet. Seeing Lewis once this morning just wasn't enough for me, so I went to pay him a visit at his house. He showed me the prize machine he came up with to encourage the townspeople to be more compassionate. I told him I just wanted to help, and he seemed to believe me. I walked back to my farm for the final time this week, crafted some paths and tried to make my entrance look somewhat presentable for any more guests I might receive before deciding that this isn't a smart use of my resources now. Aesthetics will have to come later. I gobbled down the salad I had left over from yesterday and spent the rest of my night chopping trees until it was finally time to tuck myself into bed alongside pickles. And with that, my first week as a farmer came to a close.